I'm going to take the opportunity to timestamp this interview with Lucia. We were both at the Toronto International Film Festival. This is actually the week of your premiere, and this is the first weekend that you return and I'm returning. So that's why I got a weird backdrop behind me. Anywho, um, I like cinema that puts me in the position or the shoes of another person that's so far removed from my reality. This transported me to a place, a time, with an emotional bullseye. You let me do the work, however you did the navigating. So I just wanted to say that I loved living inside this film. This was a great introduction to your cinema. And we have been tracking the project for a little while now because it went to the La Semaine de la Critique a couple of years ago as a workshop there. And you were also, I think, at the Résidence in Cannes. So everything just coalesced, and I'm happy to have discovered your film at TIFF. So congratulations, Lucia.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I really appreciate those words. I mean, I that's exactly the kind of cinema that I like, that, lets the viewer sort of infuse the sort of ellipses or the sort of missing pieces with their own experience and kind of see it through their eyes, and films that aren't, that they're not chewing for you, I guess, in a way. So I'm glad to hear that that is how you felt the movie too.
One of the most brilliant ideas about the film is this idea of trying on things, trying on personalities, trying on clothes, trying on a person's ID. It's a fascinating double, triple, quadruple approach to forming identity through the past and the future. So, what was the first nucleus of an idea that allowed you to expand into this idea of identity and the search for identity and the search for self?
Well, I think there are a couple things. I think it it was inspired by sort of this strange feeling of projections, right? And our strange need to sort of keep people alive, and projecting them onto places or objects or people, right? How is it that we can see can look at a person and see two people? That all I found very fascinating, and I found sort of unsettling and odd. And there's a lot of feelings that came up to me that weren't exactly easy to place.
Hmm.
It feels even funny, There's like something sort of odd about it, and very human. And I think also on a visual level, I was just very taken by optical illusions, and specifically one that is shows like an old woman and a young woman, and depending on how you see it, you see one or the other, right? So that was like a very inspiring image for me in terms of building the script and visual language. I didn't literally want to make an optical illusion, right? But how do you kind of embody that cinematically? Yeah, that's kind of where everything started.
Many films talk about the things we leave behind, and I think what I want to say, what I loved about this film is that we're left behind with the sentiment, we're left behind with emotions that we haven't been able to adjust to. And the other brilliant thing about your film is that the protagonist is still in her search and her quest for identifying self. So I love this. I love the relationship dynamic that you create between those two, because we could have there's so many other variations or samples where we yearn for somebody who's gone, but here we're yearning for something that we need to fix. And I don't see this
Yeah.
often in cinema.
Yeah, I think one thing I felt very interested in for Kata's journey was that she actually didn't know her grandmother very well, right? And this search for the self is in a way going, but for her going through this interpretation of who her grandmother
Yes.
was through her objects and through her things, because she never really took that time, or let's say this person was sort of a secondary character to her life, right? And it's her loss, it's this loss and this like inability to cope or to move forward that sort of sends her in this journey. And
Yeah.
I think it's um interesting to for like a teenage character, right, who's looking for references, but the last references she's interested in are her family, right? You don't want to look like or be compared to your mother or your grandmother. That as a teenager is like,
No, it's death.
scary, I
It's,
guess.
yeah.
But there's something there that she feels compelled, right, by the unknown, by the this idea of, well, I'm discovering in this closet and through these objects that I had no idea how many lives this person must have had. And now I get to sort of use my imagination there.
I don't want to call it secondary or supporting characters, but when you're creating the other family members, how important was it for you to have a grief DNA that's separate from the protagonist?
Yeah, I think, I think for me, it's the idea that there's no sort of right way to do this, right? And I wanted to infuse that, and but especially have characters that have empathy for each other, right?
Hmm.
That kind of go down this journey with Gala because they feel for her. I think the grandfather, in many ways, uh, is allowing himself and allowing his granddaughter to process in this way because there's a great deal of empathy and of pain, right? That neither of them know how to deal with. And I think, I don't know, there's a lot of, especially in family settings, there's a lot of taboo there, I think, in the sense of how to deal with grief and death with your kids, right? And of letting them feel and of not having or of not sort of letting them in on what's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on. I
yeah,
think there's a lot there that, for example, the younger sister, right, is shielded from a lot of it, but it actually kind of makes it worse for her to not have that outlet and
yeah.
to not have somebody to talk to. So I was just interested in painting a picture that sort of showed those different ways, right, that can clash or can actually mm, work together in some ways. Yeah.
I want to say that there's a couple, I don't want to use the word unsettling because there's nothing unsettling about it, but the rapport between the grandfather and sort of like him not forgetting who he's dealing with, but talk to me about the importance of adding that unsettling closeness, close proximity.
Yeah.
The perhaps not the reasoning behind it, but the importance of it.
For me, I was very interested in it was a challenge, I think, to create that fine line, right? I think the ambiguity is interesting because it makes the viewer experience more personal. One of the great parts about watching it in the theater with people is hearing the reactions, right? And some people are sort of leaning in, some people are laughing, and there's no right way to feel about it. I was just again trying to show what could sort of the thin line that these characters are walking, right, and
Hmm.
how one step in one direction or the other could go into a very sort of dangerous or very light and loving situation. And it's that line that creates the tension for me in the film, right? Yeah.
How satisfying. So, the world premiere was on Monday. How satisfying was it for you to live the experience not only once but twice? You would have had back-to-back premieres. So just like that, this is your first feature of many features. I'm a fan from the get-go. How 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 important was for you to experience that, obviously with the film team, but like the validation of having that experience and sort of like, being aware of a whole bunch of other reactions. What did that mean to you, and what are you gonna extract from that moment?
it's everything. I mean, I was so nervous that I feel like I was having an out of body experience the whole way. But I mean, we made this so that we could watch it in a theater and we could watch it with a full theater, and that is like that moment is what we've been working towards, and
Mhm.
to see the different reactions, some of even unexpected, and really really cool. So it's incredibly rewarding to be able to experience that. Yeah. And I think what you were saying of like, what is that? To your last point, I think it's just sort of reassuring, right? To sort of trust the process
Yeah,
and trust that what you're building is going to connect in a way.
I'm gonna blame you for adding a new stop to my bucket list. I had heard about Mallorca through many people, but the way you paint this film, there's some shots in this that are absolutely stunning. And it's not a film per se about, oh, look at where they're situated. You purposely use slow movements, and I want to think that this is a film that the quietness is enhanced by this a distilled frame. The production design, you keep it very minimalist. And when there are objects, we think about what those objects are. I just want to get a sense of how important was it for you to uh, consider time as something that
Mhm. Well, as far as the location in this island, I do have a personal connection to this place, to Mallorca. My father and his side of the family are from there, so like the character in the film, I spent all my summers there, and I find it very inspiring. And specifically for this story, I was really interested in that contrast of like setting this story of grief in an incredibly beautiful place, and to have that sort of lightness and that beauty and that sort of breathtaking element, um kind of overwhelming
Mhm.
every part of the story. um but it is this world isn't, I approached the visual uh, language and creating the world of this island from the point of view of the character, right? Of this forastera, this like foreigner who has this sort of um, relationship with the island where she only visits in the summer, right? And so it's this sort of casual thing that weaves between the tourism and the local customs and whatnot. And and to add to that, the house and the visual language, I wanted to feel, we talked a lot about this idea of sort of postcard like images that
Yeah.
are beautiful but also slightly odd because they're too perfect and there's something like almost artificial about it. And as far as the element of time, I think, well, there are many things that went into that, but I think, for example, with the production design, right, the house, we were very intentional in how, on one hand, minimal it is. It feels like, you recognize it as this house that grandparents live in at the beachside. It has that exact vibe, but there's something almost too perfect about it and too like color coordinated that again ties to that sort of pretend artificiality element that I think the character is sort of juggling in this story.
I want to say that
Um,
ashtray would only belong in their house, the ashtray. Yeah.
totally, totally. Um, and and so and this idea that it's a little bit stuck in time, right? It's a little
Hmm.
bit like you don't quite know what time to place this in. And I think that helped us because for me, one uh, thing about grief can feel like time stops, right? Or that time is stretching, and or more so that time lacks meaning, right? That you're kind of in this stretch where you're processing or learning how to live with something that is very destabilizing. And so all of these elements were sort of in place to help us feel like time is stopping, and these long takes, these wide shots where we wanted people's eye to sort of wander around, to play a little bit in the frame, and to land on details, or to feel that idea that like these days are stretching to infinity for you and for the character, right?
For Zoe Stein, your lead actress, here she revisits the character. I've seen this a couple of times. I mean, a lot of times at Sundance where a young filmmaker such as yourself will make the short film, expand that universe. But I'm always curious about directors who make the choice to use the same actor, and the time between both performances, in the sense that Zoe is a lot older than she would have been when she made the short. I mean, 5 years for young actress is like, it's like 30 for me. What is her rapport to the character when she's A, lived experiences that might be similar to the character, or B, has had the chance to expand her resume and then touch upon other milestones in terms of emotional inventory? How much fun was it for you as a filmmaker to see somebody embody the character for a second time, but also perhaps add layers that you might not be expecting?
Totally. I feel very lucky in that sense. I think Zoe and I connected in making the short film, and it was just a very, I have to say, easy process for me to work with her. We work very similarly and are the kind of people who like to have more answers than questions when we're exploring, and to leave that sort of space for interpretation and for play. And so I had no doubt that she has it, right? She has this thing that actors have where you look at her and she gives you so little, but at the same time you feel so much. And that's so rare in young actors, I think. Um, and I think, of course, yes, 5 years go by and you do have that, like, huh, what has she changed a lot? But we had been, we kept in touch
Of
throughout the
course.
years, and as soon as I saw her again while we were sort of beginning to put this together, I was like, well, it's you. There's nobody else here for
The
this role, and I think I also, in spending these 5 years developing from the short to the feature, I didn't want to make the same thing, and I didn't want her to play the same character necessarily, right? I think they're rooted in the same place, but I think there was something more for her there to play in terms of, this character is a little bit more empowered. The journey feels more active for her in the sense that, yes, she's hearing this comparison, but it's also like very much rooted in her curiosity.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wanted to expand there, right? And to also allow that character to shift a little bit.
I was going to say a very silly statement. It's I discovered how your actress looks physically before seeing you today, and I can't help but notice that she sort of like looks like the younger version of you. And I've seen this in cinema before. Blue Valentine, Ryan Gosling looks like Derek France. If you ever see the two in real life,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is there a little bit of truth there? I mean, you both have sort of like the same garb there,
I
same
think
cloth, I should say.
it's funny. I think that the story isn't the film isn't autobiographical, but it's
Yes.
definitely written by me, and I think there's something there that subconsciously you connect. And also it's funny because we have similar backgrounds in that we both have family from that island, and so there's a lot there that personally we both connected, right? And made it very easy to work together and to kind of have that common language. And just to say too that, I felt so confident that she was gonna do an incredible job. But as a first-time director, it's so scary to walk into set and do this for the first time. But having her as the lead actress, someone that I've worked with and that I trust and that we trust each other, was such a huge win for me.
It must have been fun for you to see her get a whole bunch of other roles before this feature, which is always validating on your choice as, as a filmmaker, but also a casting director, quote unquote.
Totally, totally. No, she's grown so much. I mean, she's so good at her job. She has so much control. But also it was really cool to see her interact with the young actress who plays her younger sister, Martina Garcia, who this was her first role
Yeah.
in a film, and she really took care of her in a beautiful way and sort of held her hand through difficult scenes, and that was really cool to see her and see that journey for Zoe of
Yeah.
where how far she's come as an actor.
She's a veteran at this point. I'm going to
Yeah.
end with two questions. As we know, filmmaking is three components. It's writing, filming, and editing. And I get a sense, this is my insight is I get a sense that perhaps you had maybe more creative spark or ideas in the edit. That's a complete guess on my part. How much fun was it to discover or refine your film in post?
It was incredible. It was so fun. I mean, I got to work with a really great editor. Her name is Paola Freddi, Italian editor, and we worked very closely together to sort of build this journey. And I think one of the things we realized early on was that yes, we were painting this picture of this family, but it is her journey, and it's her perspective that's sort of allowing us to see the rest of the family and how they react. And so as soon as we sort of landed there, it was very easy to sort of make those decisions and to build this journey for her. And these moments where her reality and certain elements of her imagination start to sort of glitch and you feel this blurring, that was also kind of really part of the creative process in post-production of finding exactly when those moments fit, because putting them before or after certain scenes has a completely different effect on
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
When I get a sense that it's almost like the waves crashing. There's space, and then you're stuck in a vacuum a little bit, and you're coming to scenes and you're revisiting other interactions. And I quite like the flow of that. There's a very nice organic flow to the idea of what a day looks like and how multiple relationships can coexist at the same time through your POV. I'm gonna end with this question is like I can't wait to see the film festival path for this film and I get a sense of where this situate like where do you situate yourself in Spanish the Spanish film industry right now.
To show the film in Spain and to see how it's received, because it's been such an incredible reception here in
In
at
Toronto.
TIFF,
Yeah.
and I felt such a warm welcome. I know it's going to be great as well to be able to also celebrate with the team too, because the TIFF is Toronto's quite far from Spain, so it's going to be fun to be able to celebrate with everyone.
And I guess I can brief endly with I don't want to necessarily know if you have other projects coming up. That's a dull, not interesting question, but what are some of the themes or perhaps some other things in the toolbox that you want to try for your second or third efforts? Is a lot of people are doing. I mean, a lot of people at your stage would move on to television just to pay bills, whatnot. What are you where is your artistic heart going towards, if you will?
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna keep doors. If a door opens, I'm gonna peek my head in and see what's going on there. But I'm just remaining very open. I'm working on two other features that are not quite the same world as this. I want to continue playing with sort of genre elements, but in my own way. I think, you know, this film plays with ghostly elements, but in a way that isn't expected, and
Yeah.
and I'm interested in incorporating, you know, perhaps thriller elements or stuff like that into the worlds that I write.
Hey, this is Eric from myoncinema.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.